She was a God-fearing young woman with a rising career in law enforcement.
She loved to help people.
She was a ray of light.
And he was the man who'd join her in holy matrimony.
The two quickly became inseparable.
She opened her heart. She fell in love.
But hearts are broken when gunshots ring out in the night.
He tried his best to protect her.
I literally felt my world turn upside down. I lost my whole soul.
What initially seems like an open and shut case is anything but.
They now have a double homicide. He owed a kingpin a lot of money.
And when dark secrets come to the surface, they'll send the case spiraling out of control.
She didn't know that he was married.
The woman was pregnant.
I was totally shocked.
He was going to lose everything.
Can't take this.
Ain't no way you could tell me you loved her and turn around and do that. No, that was hate.
October 27th, 2021. It's a chilly fall day in Covington, Georgia, a small city about 40 miles east of Atlanta.
Covington is a very nice suburban area and a great place to raise a family.
If you talk to anyone from Covington, they refer to themselves as the Hollywood of the South because numerous shows and blockbuster movies have been shot in the city of Covington.
But as night falls on this charming southern community, a horror story begins to play out in real life.
Around 10:30 p.m. that night, Tyrone McPherson was driving to his cousin's house to hang out.
As Tyrone makes his way to the neighborhood where his cousin, 35-year-old Jaquavia Bo Jackson, lives, he receives a call from him.
Bo was frantic.
Whoa, calm down, man. What happened?
Bo told him his wife had just been shot.
Bo was too frantic to give too much information, aside from the fact that there was two assailants.
All right, listen, I just pulled up. Just stay with her. I'm going to call the cops.
Tyrone hangs up with his cousin and calls police.
Newton County 911.
Hello, yes, there's been a shooting. I need some help. Send some help, quick.
Newton County investigators race to the home.
They know time is of the essence in a situation like this.
When the police arrived, Tyrone was outside with his cousin.
Come on!
Bo kept repeating, I knew this was going to happen. They just came into the house and they started shooting.
Bo is hysterical, holding a gun in his hand.
Sir, drop the weapon, please.
She's inside. I did everything I could.
He begins to sob and says that his wife has been shot and he tried his best to protect her.
Police slowly make their way inside the home with guns drawn.
They have no earthly idea whether Bo's wife is dead or alive, or even if the shooters are still on the scene.
Investigators don't find any sign of the shooters, but they do find Bo's wife, 28-year-old Shakima Brown Jackson.
She appeared to have been shot several times.
An officer checks for any sign of life but does not find a pulse. Shakima is gone.
Shakima Brown Jackson was a warm-hearted young woman dedicated to living out her faith.
She was the most special thing in life I could ever hold and endure.
My little cousin, she was a ray of light. She lit up any room that she walked into. She's funny, too smart for her own good.
Shakima was a great, bubbly person, very jokeful, loved the Lord.
Shakima was very active in her church, and she loved volunteering.
Right away, I could see that she was really serious about learning about God. She came to me and said, I would like to teach. And so I told her to prepare some lessons and see how you do.
Let's start with the prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you, God, for this Bible study that we're having on tonight, Lord. I just thank you.
Shakima never, ever missed Bible study.
He surrendered up his life so that we may have eternal life.
Shakima would always encourage me and just be like, see where God leads you.
For Shakima, she believed God was leading her to a career in law enforcement.
She loved to help people. And the job that she was getting into, she felt like that she could be a part of something bigger than herself.
On the job, she met the man who would eventually become her husband, Jaquavia Bo Jackson.
She was working as a security guard in a manufacturing company.
She would let people in, let them out.
Bo was a successful truck driver.
Well, seeing you always makes my day.
Thank you.
The attraction was there, and Bo didn't waste any time.
Mind if I take you out this weekend?
I'd like that.
He became this wonderful man to her because she opened her heart. She fell in love.
She was just excited to, have somebody that was quiet and didn't seem like they was out there doing everything under the sun.
In February of 2020, the couple promised themselves to one another in holy matrimony. And that fall, Shakima gave birth to their son.
She did everything for this kid. She was an immaculate mom. Everything, this was her world.
Boy, her world lit up. He was her ray of sunshine. Literally. He got this infectious smile from Shakima.
After the birth of her son, Shakima was more driven than ever.
She was very interested in becoming a deputy.
She was determined to do everything. With a baby, with a husband. I'm determined. I'm going to be a deputy sheriff.
Shakima's determination paid off.
She worked hard at it. She studied it. She was in mandate for months and months. And I remember the day she called me on the floor screaming and hollering, "Mommy, I did it, I did it." I said, "Yes, baby, I knew you could. I told you."
Bo and the rest of her family were so proud of Shakima.
But only a month after her promotion, Shakima's fellow deputies have found her inside her home, covered in blood.
We did discover Shakima Jackson, deceased on the couch, appeared to have been shot several times.
However, police soon learned that Shakima isn't the only victim of this deadly shooting.
On the other side of the room is the body of a man lying face down.
He's been shot one time in the back of the head.
They now have a double homicide on their hands.
With her husband, Jaquavia Bo Jackson by her side, 28-year-old Shakima Brown Jackson was ready to take on the world.
She was just so excited to be a deputy sheriff. She had just graduated the mandate process, and she was certified.
Shakima had a great reputation. She was a hard worker. She was a Fulton County deputy. Everybody had nothing but positive things to say about her.
However, just 1 month after her promotion, Shakima has fallen victim to a horrific shooting.
Shakima had been shot 7 times, once in the shoulder, 3 times in the chest, and another 3 times in the face.
To detectives, it seems like overkill.
That's a lot of time to shoot someone. There was a lot of rage behind these shots.
And Shakima isn't the only victim.
On the other side of the room is the body of a man lying face down on the floor.
He was shot in the back of his head through his hoodie.
But who is he?
His driver's license identified him as Lavoy Brown, Shakima's older brother.
30-year-old Lavoy Brown wasn't just Shakima's big brother. He was her best friend.
They just always stuck together. They never even had fights.
You couldn't say Lavoy without Shakima and Shakima without Lavoy. He was an active member in our church also. He loved God.
Everybody in the church, when they first came, thought they were twins because of how close they were. They interacted so well together. I'm saying these 2 young folks are really, really humble and loving towards one another.
Lavoy was her full protector. He protect his sister from head to toe. You hear me? He was her, how you say, ride or die. They did everything.
So how did this beloved brother and sister end up shot to death, just mere feet from each other?
There were no shell casings in the living room at all. At that moment, I thought somebody just picked them up to cover their tracks.
But investigators do find a spent .45 caliber projectile.
And it's covered in sheetrock and fiber, as if it had gone through the leg of the couch.
It appears as if the bullet was shot at a low angle at the end of the hallway out toward the living room.
Going down the hallway, there was pieces of sheetrock that were on the floor. At that time, we just knew that we had 2 people dead, and we only had one person there that was possibly a witness, and that was Jaquavia.
He has been taken to the station and is awaiting to give a formal statement.
But before detectives can head back to the station to interview Shakima's husband, her panicked mother arrives on the scene.
I pulls up. I see the yellow tape. I'm like, God, yellow tape. You know, I'm from New York. When you see yellow tape, that's death.
We can't let you inside.
What is going on?
Can't
Where
let you
are
inside.
my babies? Where are my babies?
I'm screaming out, she's a deputy. She's one of y'all. Oh, where my kids? Lavoy, screaming, hollering.
Are they gone?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
He said 2 people came in there and killed them. I dropped to my knees. Them officers, all they could do is shake their head.
Losing a son and a daughter in the same night. It was such a tragedy.
When I see my kids come out in the body bag, it's like I lost my whole soul. I lost myself. I lost myself.
When the news spreads to the rest of Shakima and Lavoy's loved ones, they're equally devastated.
I can't even explain the hurt. It's like being in a storm and the wind blowing everybody everywhere. There was a lot of pain, a lot of questions, me praying to God, asking why.
I literally felt my world turn upside down. Literally. Like it was night and day. I'm trying to call whoever to find out what's going on. I'm even calling Lavoy and Shakima phone because I'm like, okay, I can't believe it.
40 miles away, at Fulton County Sheriff's Headquarters, Shakima's coworkers are also struggling to come to terms with the tragic news.
Once I found out what was going on, it was just unreal. I was just heartbroken because of the relationship that we had built and what she meant to the sheriff's office and the people that she worked with. And she didn't deserve that at all.
Back at the Covington Police Station, homicide detectives sit down with Jaquavia Bo Jackson.
He still appeared to be pretty distraught.
Bo, tell us what happened tonight.
Bo says earlier that evening, Shakima informed him that her brother would be coming over with a couple of his friends.
Lavoy knows 2 guys that would like to get in the trucking business and want to come by and talk trucking business with him.
I mean, it would really mean a lot to my brother.
I don't know. It's kind of short notice. And my cousin's already coming over tonight.
He don't feel comfortable about it because he don't know these people.
But Bo says Shakima was insistent.
Honey, it's not going to take that long. Come on.
Okay, fine.
Around dinner time, Lavoy came over to wait for his friends. But as it got later in the night, Bo told him that it was too late for his friends to come over.
It's getting kind of late, boy.
Come on, man. Just meet with them. You might like what they have to say.
What do you mean?
You help these people out? It's $500 a day, man.
Bo tells detectives that's when he realized what Lavoy and his friends were really after. And it wasn't business advice.
These men that were coming over to the house were in the drug game.
Jaquavia starts then saying that Lavoy is trying to get him to run drugs, that he's only wanting him to get these trucks and stuff like that so he can run stuff up for him in the trucks and whatnot and try to help him out in an illegal business.
According to Bo, Lavoy said he owed a kingpin a lot of money, and this was the only way he can think to repay his debt.
Please, man, I owe these people so much money. Help me out on this, man.
Well, you're gonna have to find another way. You better tell your friends it's off.
Bo said he declined to get involved.
But Bo explains that before he and Lavoy could continue their discussion, the men showed up at the house.
It must be them.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
This is my brother-in-law, Jaquavia, but you can call him Bo.
Bo claimed the men introduced themselves as Barry and City.
And Bo says Shakima welcomed them with open arms.
Can I get you two anything?
I'll take a water if you don't mind.
Sure.
Bo tells detectives he immediately got a bad feeling, so he excused himself to go grab his pistol from the bedroom.
Show me, sit down.
Excuse me one moment. I'll be right back.
From the bedroom, Bo says he could hear the three men start talking business.
What do you have for us?
My brother-in-law, he's a truck driver. He can transport some of that stuff across country.
Okay. I mean, we've been helping you out a lot.
He could hear them talking for a moment, and then the volume of their voices increased.
It started to get heated.
He said that he could hear them arguing with Lavoy.
Please, I need more time.
You out of time. We want the money now.
He hears yelling,
What's going on?
and then he hears gunshots.
Detectives investigating the double homicide of Shakima Brown Jackson and her brother Lavoy Brown are speaking with Shakima's husband, Jaquavia Bo Jackson.
Bo claimed that on the night of the murders, Lavoy invited some men over with the hopes of convincing him of transporting drugs on his truck.
And Bo says when he excused himself from the conversation, he could hear it get heated from the back bedroom.
He said that he could hear the men arguing with Lavoy.
Please, I need more time.
You out of time. We want the money now.
Then Bo says he heard Shakima enter.
What's going on?
He hears yelling, and then he hears gunshots.
Hold on.
In an attempt to scare the men off, Bo says he then cocked his gun.
He leans out the back bedroom door and fires one shot towards the living room area, towards the male.
The bullet scraped the side of the wall. Detectives note that this is probably the projectile that they found on the living room floor, covered in sheetrock.
By the time Bo made it back into the living room, the men were gone.
He sees Lavoy's dead. He sees Shakima's dead.
Yo, Tyrone!
In a state of shock, the first person he thought to call was his cousin Tyrone, who was already on his way over.
She bleeding bad.
Whoa, calm down, man. What happened?
Detectives asked Bo if he had any type of description about these men called Barry and City.
One was heavy set and short, one tall and skinny.
Detectives are skeptical of Bo's story.
It seems highly unlikely that Lavoy would be mixed up in the drug game.
Lavoy has no history of drug-related arrests. In fact, he has no criminal background at all, for that matter.
But one element of Bo's story does add up.
The gun Bo was holding at the crime scene wasn't a match for the bullets that killed Shakima and Lavoy.
Bo's gun was a .45 caliber pistol.
The bullets retrieved from the victims' bodies were consistent with a different type of weapon.
That firearm, based on what the forensics stated, it was a Colt revolver, 38 Special to .357 Magnum.
Could Bo be telling the truth? Hoping for more insight into his relationship with his wife, detectives bring in Shakima's mother, Zona Inman, the next morning to give an official statement.
She was still understandably heartbroken after what happened to her two children.
You got a mother coming out here who didn't lose one child. She lost two children all at one time from one act of violence.
Is it possible that Leroy or Shakima had ties to gangs or drug affiliates?
I'm sorry, what?
We talking and he's saying a whole bunch of mess about all of this crazy nonsense.
It don't even sound right. That's hard to believe. What, two guys? That is ridiculous. Like, they don't mix. Come on, Shakima and Lavoy. If anybody knows them, come on now.
If you knew them personally, you'll know. You could never identify them with anything dealing with drugs.
Lavoy was a hard worker and a very good man. He would never get involved in the street life. And he would never do anything to put his sister's career or safety at risk.
Okay. I can understand that. But what can you tell us about Shakima's relationship with her husband? Any issues there?
Oh, yes.
She told me that Shakima and Jaquavia had been having marital problems, that Jaquavia had actually moved into another bedroom. They were having issues with money and stuff like that.
You talking when I'm talking. Stop talking when I'm talking. Stop talking when I'm talking.
So Shakima and Jaquavius were arguing every day. Their marriage started going down.
Zona explains that although Bo worked in trucking at the beginning of the marriage, by October of 2021, he had been laid off.
I can't afford to keep doing
I ain't trying
this.
to hear all that, man.
I don't know what happened, but he had to resign, so they claim. They were having issues with the bills. It was always the bills. And he was lack of work. He couldn't help her pay nothing.
But it wasn't just money problems they were having.
Shakima had just found out that Bo had been unfaithful, and she discovered it in the worst way possible.
Letters start arriving to the house, ordering Bo to take a paternity test.
Not only had Bo cheated on her, but the woman was pregnant.
Detectives investigating the murder of Shakima Brown Jackson and Lavoy Brown are speaking with the siblings' mother, Zona Inman. And they've just learned that Shakima's husband, Bo, had been hiding a horrible secret from her.
Not only had Bo cheated on Shakima, but he had gotten another woman pregnant.
She on the child support for the kid, and they sent the letter.
Shakima confronted Bo about the letters.
Bo, what is this?
Wow, this is ridiculous.
Bo, you can be honest with me. What's going on?
Come on, babe. You know I never cheat on you.
With their relationship teetering on the edge, Bo made a promise to Shakima.
Jaquavia told her that's not his kid, she's lying on me, and I'll prove it.
He said he would take the paternity test, but was certain they would come back negative.
I will take the test and you will see. Don't worry.
While Shakima was hoping for the best, she had her doubts.
She called me saying, if he fails these tests, I'm taking my son and I'm leaving.
Because believe me, my daughter is not going to deal with you and she know you cheating, because she's not going to stand for that.
But to everyone's surprise, the results indicate Bo is not the father.
The paternity results were negative, as Bo had predicted.
How did the other woman take the news?
Not well. She still believed that the child is his.
This girl was very adamant, I'm going to get your daughter and Bo. I'm going to take them down. This is his baby. He's going to claim it.
Was it possible this woman was involved in the killing somehow?
Well, thank you for coming in, and again, we're sorry for your loss.
Detectives are eager to speak with Bo's mistress, Destiny Burkett. But before they can track her down, she comes to them.
I got notified by dispatch that there was a female that wanted to speak with me in reference to Jaquavia Jackson.
Thank you for coming in, Miss Burkett.
Of course.
So tell us about your history with Mr. Jackson.
She was in a relationship with Jaquavia. She didn't know that he was married, and then when they split up, by that point, she was pregnant.
When I told him about the pregnancy, he wanted nothing to do with it.
He was in complete denial that the child was his.
Bo told her to leave him alone because he did not want his wife finding out that he had cheated. Eventually, he stopped accepting any of her calls and texts.
But what am I supposed to do? Raising a child alone isn't easy. So I decided to get the courts involved.
She wanted Jaquavia to start paying child support, and so she wanted him to take a paternity test.
She just wanted Bo to take accountability for his actions and assist her financially with their child.
But when the paternity test came back, it showed that Jaquavia wasn't the father.
However, Destiny isn't buying it.
She's like, I know he's the father. He was the only one I was with.
She said that she was absolutely convinced that Bo had rigged the DNA test.
So how do you think he rigged it?
Look at this.
Whenever someone comes to take a paternity test, a DNA test, they actually take a picture of whoever shows up.
When she looked at the photos, she knew it was not Jaquavia that had taken that test.
They look at the man in the photo, and she's right. It's clearly not Bo Jackson.
It's a completely different person. It would appear that he sent someone else to take the test in his place.
But that's not all.
My attorneys discovered that I wasn't the only one he did this to.
There was a second woman who came forward saying Bo did the exact same thing to her and faked a paternity test to avoid paying child support.
How many mistresses did Bo have?
While investigating the murder of Shakima Brown Jackson, detectives have discovered that her husband, Bo, had potentially gotten 2 other women pregnant.
I wasn't the only one he did this to.
2 women had come forward and requested paternity tests in an effort to try to get child support from Mr. Jackson. There was clear evidence that showed that he sent someone else other than himself to go take the DNA test in a clear attempt to try to show that he was not the father, even if he really was.
He had the person go to take the paternity test for him. That's out of the box. I've never heard of anybody doing that.
For you to sit down and plot something as crazy as this. He was sneaky, very sneaky. He's a liar. Everything came out his mouth was a lie.
And Destiny says when she found out about Bo's other pregnant mistress, the 2 women decided to join forces against him.
We had our attorneys submit for follow-up paternity testing and a court date set to argue our case.
Everything was leading up to their day in court. The courts had even subpoenaed witnesses.
One of those witnesses was Shakima Brown Jackson.
The court subpoenaed Shakima to help confirm that the man Bo sent to take the paternity test was indeed not Bo.
But Destiny says they never made it to their day in court.
The court date was scheduled for October 28th, the day after Shakima and Lavoy were murdered.
The hearing was supposed to be today, but here we are.
Detectives believe that this is not a coincidence. They are truly starting to believe that Bo Jackson's story of 2 drug dealers killing his wife and brother-in-law are bogus.
So we go out the next morning, we do a more comprehensive canvass of the neighborhood.
They noticed that the home directly across the street from the Jacksons' residence had security cameras set up.
We wanted to know, did he catch anything on camera? So we went up and tried to get the video from them.
But detectives are out of luck.
They advised us it doesn't work. It hasn't worked for months.
Sure wish I could be more help. Wait a minute, one other thing, though.
He did advise us that Jaquavia reached out to him and did ask about the camera. He wanted to know if his camera worked. The neighbor told him, no, my camera doesn't work. It hasn't worked in a while.
This as a major red flag. Why would Bo be concerned about if their cameras were working or not?
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
That just, to me, added more suspicion towards Jaquavia.
And in speaking with another neighbor, investigators hit the jackpot.
Their security cameras are functioning.
The surveillance camera pointed towards Mr. Jackson's front yard and the beginning of the driveway in the mailbox.
Back at the station, detectives begin poring over the footage.
The detectives scrubbed through to about 10:20 p.m. on October 27th, which is when Bo claims the killers arrived. However, they watch the road and they don't see a single car pull up to the Jacksons' residence.
10:21. You hear these shots go off.
This could only mean one thing. The shots came from someone already inside the house.
Bo's story about Barry and City is a lie.
Nothing that Jaquavi had told me in our interview or the day that he talked to the deputies was corroborated with the video.
With this evidence, detectives have exactly what they need to obtain an arrest warrant for Jaquavi Bo Jackson.
Yeah, this is Hicks. We got him.
So we took arrest warrants that day for murder, aggravated assault, and several other charges, and we took him into custody. His demeanor went from nothing to all of a sudden, you got the wrong guy, trying to drum tears up or something, and act as if he was definitely the one person that did not do this, that he was being falsely arrested.
And the dramatics don't stop there.
It appears that Bo is very uncomfortable. He's wincing and shifting around in his seat.
Are you nervous?
It's not that at all, man. It's my stomach.
He claims to have had ulcers or something like that.
The detectives get him something to drink to try to soothe his stomach so they can move on with the interview.
Honestly, tell us what happened.
I told you. Leroy brought in some bad dudes who wanted drug money. He couldn't pay up, so they killed him.
Bo is adamant that what he said before was true.
Detectives tell Bo that the jig is up. They confront him with the surveillance footage and tell him that his story does not make sense.
It's then that Bo throws himself from his chair.
He's, oh man, you act like you don't believe me. Oh, my stomach. He started acting like he was getting sick in the interview.
Babe, call the doctor.
He says his stomach is on fire.
Detectives suspect that Bo is faking the pain to get out of questioning, but they can't say for sure.
Bo is taken to the hospital to be treated before being sent to jail.
Get up. They wouldn't be getting any confessions out of him.
But even without a confession from the man himself, Bo goes to trial for double homicide on July 24th, 2023.
He pled not guilty. His defense, and remained to be the same defense, was that these two random people showed up to the house that night and shot and killed Lavoy and Shakima. That was the only defense they had.
When it's their turn, prosecutors present what they believe really happened.
They believe that things were on the rocks between Bo and Shakima.
I noticed my daughter wasn't happy anymore. She wasn't smiling anymore. She would, Mom, what do I need to do?
And when the letter arrived about a court-ordered paternity test for Bo's mistress, Destiny Burkett, Shakima had reached her breaking point.
Bo, what is this?
She couldn't believe her husband was being accused of fathering another woman's child.
They were talking about separation.
But when the paternity test came back negative, Shakima decided to give Bo one more chance.
Marriage was very sacred to Shakima. She wanted to trust her husband.
Now they're talking about trying to work things out.
However, Bo knew that his true colors were soon to be revealed.
Shakima received more letters from the court, now summoning her to be a witness in the paternity case.
She thought this was a follow-up court date to confirm that Bo wasn't the father.
Little did she know at the court date, she would have found out that her husband was accused of fathering children with multiple women and had faked the previous paternity test that he took.
She was about to learn the truth about everything.
Prosecutors argue that it wasn't a coincidence that Shakima died the day before they were due in court.
She was definitely going to divorce him.
He'd been lying to her their entire marriage. He was possibly going to lose everything he had. He wasn't going to have anywhere to go.
Not only would he lose his meal ticket if Shakima divorced him, but she also would have likely got custody of her child, and Bo would have had to pay her child support.
Bo couldn't let that happen. If Shakima didn't want to be with him and put up with his philandering ways, she had to go.
But why did Lavoy have to go too? Although Jaquavia Bo Jackson refuses to admit culpability in the double murder of his wife, Shakima Brown Jackson, and her brother, Lavoy Brown, prosecutors are confident in their theory of what happened.
Bo had been lying to Shakima about the other women he'd been sleeping around with.
And at the paternity hearing scheduled for October 28, 2021, Shakima was going to discover the truth.
He knew that would be the last straw in their marriage, and she'd likely divorce him. She would keep their home and their son.
He thought he was about to lose everything.
So Bo did the unthinkable.
I think he, on the fly, kind of concocted this idea of, I'm going to kill Shakima.
He grabbed the .38 caliber revolver and went into the living room.
She was just literally scrolling Facebook, comfortable on her own couch, watching videos when she was shot. Lavoy was asleep, and the initial gunshots scared him. He started to run, and he was shot in the back of the head, and he fell forward.
He just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
After Shakima and Lavoy were dead, Bo tried to stage the scene as if intruders had committed the crime.
Prosecutors believe Bo got rid of the .38 after he killed Shakima Lavoy, then used the .45 to stage a defensive shot.
And there's a good 3 or 4 minute gap between the group of shots that clearly are the murder shots, and then what we think is the defendant's sort of staged self-defense or defense of other shots that happened about 3 minutes later.
As the prosecution rests, the case is handed over to the jury to decide.
After the jury deliberated for some time, they came back with a verdict.
Jaquavia Bo Jackson was found guilty of 2 counts of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during a felony.
He's sentenced to life without parole plus 10 years.
He'll spend the rest of his life in prison.
He never showed his emotions, even throughout the entire trial. Even once he was being sentenced, nothing changed. He had a very cold look on his face the entire time.
A follow paternity test determined Bo was the father of Destiny's baby boy. He wasn't the father of the second mistress baby.
For the family and friends of Shakima and Lavoy, it's a somber end to their loved one's story.
Justice has been served, even though, it's still heartbreaking.
There's no way you could tell me you loved her and turn around and do that. Nah. That was hate.
The child has to grow up without a dad, no mom, no nothing. I'm grandma, you know what I'm saying? I can't teach him manly things in spite of what I'm going through. I have to trust the process of God.
They should be remembered as people always trying to help, people that impacted their community, impacted their environment with fun and love.
I just want them to be remembered by their smile and laughter. There was always jokes with us. They're both goofy.
In honor of Shakima and her brother, Shakima's fellow Fulton County deputies created Operation Take a Stand, a new categorization system that helps police prioritize victims of domestic violence.
They came up with a system of picking out warrants that are based on domestic violence. issues, and they did that in honor of Shakima.
Although there were no instances of domestic violence reported in Shakima and Bo's relationship prior to the murder, her family believes all the signs were there.
Look, I ain't trying to hear all that. I ain't trying to hear all that right now. Look,
I want young ladies to know these signs. Don't just sit there and argue. If you see that abuse, if you see that hurt, that pain, leave. It's not worth it, and it's not going to get better. Believe me.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
Early that the fumes caused her eyes to burn. This behavior, combined with his continuous grilling and his complete lack of involvement in the search for his missing girlfriend, began to refocus the investigators' suspicions on Tim. Recognizing that the standard investigative process was yielding few results, Tanisha's sister contacted Quannell X, a prominent community activist in Houston, who was known for facilitating communication between suspects and law enforcement. Interestingly, Tim Shepard's family had also reached out to Quannell, seeking protection for Tim from what they believed was unwarranted police harassment. Quannell X agreed to meet with Tim privately at his apartment. Sensing Tim's extreme anxiety, Quannell suggested they speak in the bathroom, away from any potential surveillance. During their conversation, Quannell pressed Tim to look him in the eye and tell the truth. Under this intense psychological pressure, Tim's composure shattered. He confessed to Quannell that he had flown into a violent rage when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark Marks. As she attempted to leave the apartment, he attacked her and strangled her to death. When Quannell asked what he had done with her body, Tim claimed he had placed her remains in the apartment complex dumpster. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller and relayed the confession. Police units, accompanied by Quannell and a highly distraught Tim, rushed to the dumpster. However, as previously noted, the dumpster had been emptied by the Municipal Waste Management Service just hours earlier. Investigators learned that the waste had already been transported to a massive regional landfill. A search of the facility would have required extraordinary financial resources, estimated at $500,000, with a very low probability of success. In a display of profound dignity, Tanisha's family requested that the county not expend those resources, choosing instead to focus on securing a conviction through the available evidence. Following his arrest, Tim Shepard invoked his right to legal counsel and refused to provide further statements. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required definitive physical evidence. Crime scene investigators returned to Tim's apartment, conducting an exhaustive, microscopic search of the premises. Their meticulous efforts yielded critical evidence. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal unit, forensic technicians discovered minute bone fragments and a piece of tooth enamel. Subsequent DNA testing confirmed that the enamel belonged to Tanisha Stewart. Additionally, investigators recovered charred bone fragments from the area surrounding the outdoor grill. The physical evidence, combined with the witness accounts of the continuous smoke and the meat in the bathtub, presented a horrific picture of the crime. The prosecution asserted that after strangling Tanisha, Tim had dismembered her body and utilized his grills to incinerate her remains, attempting to completely erase any evidence of her existence. On September 29, 2008, the trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard began. The prosecution faced the significant challenge of securing a murder conviction based primarily on circumstantial evidence and a confession that the defense sought to discredit. The prosecution presented their case with great care, arguing that Tim's actions were driven by an extreme need for control and an inability to accept Tanisha's decision to move on with her life. They called Quanell X to the stand, who delivered compelling testimony detailing Tim's voluntary confession in the bathroom. To further solidify their case, the prosecution called Tim's cousin Nicholas Shepard as a witness. Nicholas delivered a shocking revelation, testifying that in prior conversations, Tim had explicitly stated that if Tanisha ever attempted to leave him, he would kill her, dismember her body, and boil her remains. This testimony demonstrated a premeditated, highly specific fantasy of violence that aligned precisely with the physical evidence recovered from the scene. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Tim Shepard took the stand in his own defense, attempting to mitigate his punishment by claiming the killing was an act of self-defense. He argued that during their confrontation, Tanisha had grabbed a knife from the coffee table and attacked him, forcing him to defend himself. He claimed he had blacked out during the struggle and only realized she was dead when he regained consciousness. To support this claim, the defense introduced photographs of minor cuts on Tim's hands taken at the time of his arrest. However, the prosecution systematically dismantled this argument by questioning Tim about his actions following her death. Under cross-examination, when asked if he had placed her remains on the barbecue pit, Tim corrected the prosecutor, stating that he had placed her in the smoker. This clinical, detached admission of post-mortem mutilation shocked the courtroom and completely alienated the jury. The claim of self-defense was utterly incompatible with the days of deliberate, meticulous effort required to incinerate a human body and dispose of the remains. On October 1, 2008, the jury upheld the guilty verdict and sentenced Timothy Shepard to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty available. The psychological profile of Timothy Shepard reveals a personality dominated by fragile narcissism and an extreme, pathological need for dominance. For Shepard, Tanisha was not an independent human being with her own agency. She was a possession that validated his self-worth. Her academic success, her move to college, and her burgeoning relationship with a peer threatened his fragile ego. When he realized he could no longer control her life, he made the calculated decision to control her death, attempting to physically erase her from the world, to ensure she could never exist apart from him. The pastor, the player, and the highway of obsession While some perpetrators of domestic violence act out of a desire to control their partners, others are driven by a complex, indirect form of obsession. In these cases, a third party can become the target of extreme violence, serving as a proxy or an obstacle in the perpetrator's distorted psychological landscape. This unusual and highly complex dynamic was central to a high-profile investigation in Raleigh, North Carolina. On the morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008 morning, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 noticed a disturbing sight. Lying in the grass on the shoulder of the highway was the body of a young woman. First responders arrived quickly and confirmed that she was deceased. Initially, authorities considered the possibility of a hit-and-run pedestrian accident. However, a closer examination of the body revealed a far more violent reality. The victim had been stabbed approximately 40 times, with severe wounds concentrated around her face, neck, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords were cut, indicating a highly personal, frenzied attack. While investigators were processing the scene, a commuter named Darren Curtis drove past the backup. He noticed a white vehicle parked on the shoulder of the highway approximately a half-mile past the body. Recognizing the car as belonging to his wife, Latrice, Darren panicked, returned to the scene, and contacted the deputies. His worst fears were confirmed. The deceased woman was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis. Latrice was a popular, ambitious business administration student at North Carolina's Central University. She had been married to Darren for just 9 months, and by all outward appearances, the couple was deeply in love and planning a bright future. The extraordinary violence of her death suggested a profound level of anger, yet her family and friends could think of no one who would harbor such animosity toward her. Investigators initially focused on Darren as a standard procedure in domestic homicides. Darren was cooperative, explaining that the last time he had spoken to his wife was around 10 o'clock the previous evening, when she called to say she was running late from school and was going to get some food. Darren had gone to sleep and, upon waking the next morning to find she had not returned, assumed she had stayed at her family's home. He was on his way to work when he discovered her vehicle. A physical examination of Darren revealed no scratches, bruises, or defensive wounds that would suggest involvement in a violent struggle. Furthermore, a search of his vehicle and home yielded no physical evidence. He was ruled out as a suspect, and investigators turned their attention to the forensic findings from the autopsy. The medical examiner discovered a used condom inside Latrice's body. There were no physical injuries to her genital area that would indicate a sexual assault, suggesting that she had engaged in consensual sexual activity shortly before her death. This discovery introduced a complicated element to the case, suggesting that Latrice was leading a double life. Investigators subpoenaed Latrice's telephone records and identified a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight on the night of her murder with a Number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent, highly attractive student-athlete at North Carolina Central University who harbored ambitions of playing in the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the murder, Stephen Randolph walked into the Wake County Sheriff's Office to provide a statement. He was accompanied by his roommate, a prominent local minister named Pastor Robert Reeves, who was widely known in the community as the bishop. During his interview, Stephen initially claimed that he and Latrice were merely classmates who studied together. However, when confronted with the telephone records and the autopsy findings, Stephen admitted that they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. He explained that on the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his basement apartment, where they engaged in sexual intercourse. During the encounter, the condom became trapped, and after failing to retrieve it, Latrice left his home around 10 o'clock in the evening, intending to address the issue at her own home. Stephen claimed that after she left, he drove to the apartment of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. He asserted that Latrice called him repeatedly during this time, expressing anxiety about a potential pregnancy. Stephen maintained that he had no involvement in her death and loved her deeply. To verify Stephen's account, investigators interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves. Reeves confirmed that Stephen lived in his basement apartment and that he had seen Latrice's vehicle parked outside the residence on the evening of January 29th. Reeves claimed he had left the house at 8:15 in the evening to attend a church service and returned around 11:30, noting that both Stephen and Latrice's vehicles were gone. Reeves also mentioned that the following morning, Stephen had confided in him about his concerns regarding Latrice's potential pregnancy. This detail seemed to provide a potential motive for Stephen, who might have viewed an unplanned pregnancy as a threat to his athletic career. However, investigators also executed a search warrant for Stephen's apartment and vehicle, discovering a collection of knives and swords. While this seemed highly suspicious given the nature of Latrice's injuries, forensic testing revealed no traces of blood or tissue on any of the weapons. To verify Stephen's alibi, detectives interviewed his girlfriend, Velma Newton. Velma confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 o'clock in the evening and left around 1 in the morning, which aligned with his statement. However, Velma also revealed a series of highly disturbing events that had occurred in the weeks leading up to the murder. Both Velma and Stephen had been receiving anonymous, highly threatening telephone calls from an individual who seemed obsessed with breaking up their relationship. The caller threatened Stephen with physical harm if he did not cease his sexual activities. Furthermore, on one occasion, Stephen had discovered that all 4 tires on his vehicle had been slashed while parked outside Velma's apartment. This information suggested that a third party was actively monitoring Stephen's personal life with a high degree of hostility. The investigation took a dramatic turn when detectives received a report from State Trooper Isaac Cooper. Trooper Cooper revealed that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, just hours before Latrice's body was discovered, he had observed a disabled vehicle parked on the shoulder of Interstate 540 with its hazard lights on. He had run the license plate of the vehicle, and the registration returned to Pastor Robert Reeves. Cooper also recalled seeing a white vehicle matching the description of Latrice's car, parked on the opposite side of the highway with its hazard lights on. This revelation placed Pastor Reeves' vehicle at the exact location of the homicide during the estimated time of death. Investigators immediately brought Reeves back for further questioning. Reeves denied being on the highway that night, claiming his car must have been borrowed by Stephen, who had access to a spare key. However, investigators noticed several fresh, deep scratches on Reeves' hands and arms. When asked to explain these injuries, Reeves claimed he had scraped his arm while assisting Stephen in moving a heavy desk. When detectives questioned Stephen about this incident, Stephen stated that no such accident had occurred and that they had not moved any furniture recently. Furthermore, Stephen revealed a highly inappropriate, sexually charged encounter that had occurred between himself and the pastor. Stephen claimed that Reeves had entered his room, questioned him about his sexual activity with Latrice, and made explicit sexual advances, offering to waive Stephen's rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had rejected the advances, and the relationship had become highly strained thereafter. Investigators subpoenaed Pastor Reeves' telephone records and discovered that the anonymous, threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had been placed from Reeves' mobile phone using a blocking feature. This evidence revealed that the respected minister was harbor a deep, obsessive infatuation with his young roommate. A background check into Reeves' past revealed a history of sexual misconduct involving young men. It became clear that Reeves lived a highly compartmentalized life, maintaining the public persona of a dedicated spiritual leader while privately engaging in predatory and obsessive behavior. Forensic technicians processed the DNA evidence recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's vehicle. The analysis revealed a mixture of DNA belonging to Latrice and Pastor Robert Reeves. This physical evidence, combined with the presence of his vehicle at the scene, provided definitive proof of his involvement. On February 2nd, 2008, Robert Reeves was officially charged with first-degree murder. His trial began on September 29, 2009. The prosecution presented a compelling case, arguing that Reeves had become consumed by jealousy and resentment over Stephen's relationship with Latrice. According to the state's theory, on the night of the murder, Reeves had followed Latrice as she left his home. He utilized his familiar, non-threatening persona to convince her to pull over on the shoulder of Interstate 540. Once she was vulnerable, he launched a savage attack, stabbing her 40 times. In a state of frenzied rage, the prosecution argued that in his distorted mind, Reeves believed that by removing Latrice, he would eliminate an obstacle to his relationship with Stephen. The defense sought to shift the blame to Stephen Randolph, arguing that he possessed a stronger motive to kill Latrice due to the pregnancy scare. They also argued that Stephen could have been driving the pastor's vehicle that night. Furthermore, they introduced evidence that Stephen's DNA had been recovered from beneath Latrice's fingernails, suggesting a physical struggle between the lovers. The prosecution countered this argument by explaining that the presence of Stephen's DNA under her fingernails was a natural result of their intimate contact earlier that evening. They emphasized that there was no logical explanation for the presence of the pastor's DNA inside Latrice's vehicle, nor could the defense explain the fresh defensive scratches on Reeves' arms or his fabricated alibi. On October 9, 2009, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of relief to the community, though the tragic loss of Latrice continued to weigh heavily on her husband and family. From a psychological perspective, Pastor Robert Reeves represents a classic case of displaced aggression driven by repressed desire and extreme obsession. Reeves was unable to accept his own identity or the rejection of his advances by Stephen. Instead of addressing his own psychological conflicts, he projected his frustration onto Latrice, viewing her as a corrupting influence and a rival for Stephen's affection. By destroying Latrice, he sought to regain control over his environment and eliminate the source of his intense jealousy, demonstrating how a facade of holiness can mask a profound and destructive darkness. The lessons of the dark path. The 3 cases analyzed here represent different facets of the same fundamental psychological truth, that when relationships are stripped of mutual respect and replaced by a pathological need for ownership, the consequences are often catastrophic, whether driven by the fear of abandonment, as in the case of Denise Miller, the rage of fragile narcissism, as in the case of Timothy Shepard, or the distorted envy of an obsessive observer, as in the case of Robert Reeves. The underlying catalyst remains the same. It is the refusal to grant another human being their fundamental right to self-determination. In each instance, the perpetrators went to extraordinary lengths to conceal their actions, utilizing denial, deception, and physical destruction. Yet in every case, it was the meticulous, patient work of law enforcement officers, crime scene investigators, and forensic scientists that ultimately uncovered the truth. Through the careful analysis of physical evidence, the systematic verification of alibis, and the deep understanding of behavioral patterns, justice was successfully pursued. For the communities affected by these crimes, the educational value of these cases is profound. They serve as a stark reminder of the importance of recognizing the early warning signs of possessiveness, control, and obsessive behavior in relationships. By fostering greater awareness and supporting those who seek to escape volatile situations, we can hope to prevent such tragedies in the future. In the end, the triumph of justice in these cases stands as a testament to the dedication of those who work to protect the innocent ensuring that even in the face of profound darkness, the truth will ultimately come to light. The human heart possesses an extraordinary capacity for devotion, but when that devotion becomes entangled with insecurity, control, and obsession, the consequences can be devastating. As criminal psychology analysts and investigators, we often observe how the promising beginnings of romance can quietly degrade into tragedy. This exploration looks closely at 3 distinct cases where the illusion of love masked a darker reality, examining the psychological fractures that led to violence and the methodical investigative efforts that ultimately restored order and justice. Our first case study takes us to the tranquil community of Little Elm, Texas, and a nearby hotel in Gainesville during the winter of 2004. It was a setting that seemed far removed from violence, yet it became the stage for a deeply complex tragedy involving a dedicated police officer and a mother searching for a fresh start. The crisis came to light in the early morning hours of December 11th, 2004, just past 4 ante-meridium. The night manager of a local hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received an urgent and disoriented call from one of the guest rooms. Sensing that something was wrong, the manager walked down the quiet hallway and knocked on the door of room 1047. Hearing no response but recognizing the deadbolt was engaged, the manager summoned a maintenance worker to force entry. Inside the darkened room, they made a troubling discovery. Crumpled on the floor in a near-fetal position was a woman. Bleeding from a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye. A .25 caliber handgun lay on the floor beside her. Emergency medical services were summoned immediately, and she was rushed to a nearby trauma center, her survival hanging in the balance. Back at the scene, investigators began the process of identifying the woman and understanding the circumstances of the shooting. The room showed signs of disarray, and detectives found alcohol and over-the-counter sleeping pills. The immediate question was whether this was an attempted self-inflicted injury or the work of an assailant who had fled. The mystery deepened significantly when the woman was identified as Denise Miller. Just 24 hours earlier, both Denise and her boyfriend, a respected Little Elm police officer named Wayne Irby, had been reported missing. Officer Irby had failed to report for his scheduled 6 ante-meridium shift on December 10th, raising immediate red flags among his colleagues who knew him as an incredibly punctual and dedicated public servant. To understand how this point of crisis was reached, investigators had to look backward into the history of the relationship. Denise Miller had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where she was known as a popular, bright, and bubbly young woman. She married her college sweetheart and had 2 children, a daughter named Whitney and a son named Walter. After her marriage ended in divorce in 1995, Denise sought a clean slate. At 36 years of age, she relocated her family to the close-knit suburb of Little Elm, Texas, where She secured a successful position with a liquor distributor and built a beautiful home for her children. Her life seemed complete, but she still hoped to find a supportive partner. That opportunity arrived in 2003 when Officer Wayne Orby knocked on her door to advise her to close her garage door due to recent neighborhood thefts. Wayne was a 37-year-old veteran of the police force, a man who took immense pride in his profession and was highly regarded in the community. A mutual attraction quickly developed, and after their first date, they became an exclusive couple. Wayne embraced Denise's children, and to outside observers, they appeared to be a happy, blended family. However, beneath the surface of this promising relationship, psychological friction was beginning to develop. Denise struggled with deep-seated trust issues, frequently suspecting Wayne of being overly friendly with other women on his beat. Despite Wayne's denials, these accusations created a persistent strain. By the spring of 2004, the couple attempted to move past their difficulties and eventually purchased a home together. Yet sharing a residence seemed to amplify their underlying conflicts. A few months later, the trust issues resurfaced, leading Wayne to make the decision to move out into a rental property across town. The separation was painful, marked by tears and arguments. When Denise unexpectedly lost her job in November of that year, Wayne, demonstrating a protective instinct, agreed to reconcile so that Denise and her children would not face financial instability. They attempted to work through their problems once more, but the fundamental issues of insecurity and control remained unresolved. The final escalation began on the morning of December 10th, 2004, when Wayne failed to appear at the police department briefing. His partner, Jerry Walker, and colleague, Cynthia Medrano, grew increasingly alarmed when Wayne did not answer his telephone. A welfare check at the home Wayne shared with Denise revealed no vehicles in the driveway and the doors locked. Investigators interviewed Denise's children, who reported that they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. Her daughter, Whitney, recalled a brief, unusual phone call from her mother around midnight, in which Denise stated she was running errands and expressed her love in a tone that felt uncharacteristically formal and final. Fearing the worst, Officer Jerry Walker and another officer decided to check Wayne's independent rental home. Using a key obtained from the landlord, they entered the residence. In the kitchen, they found Wayne's personal fanny pack and his cellular telephone, a highly unusual discovery for an officer who rarely went anywhere without his communication devices. Moving further into the house, they discovered Wayne lying on the floor, deceased from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry, suggesting he had been caught entirely off guard. The investigation quickly transitioned into a search for Denise and her vehicle. At the home she shared with Wayne, detectives found a handwritten note from Denise in the master bedroom, which appeared to express deep despair and a contemplation of suicide. Additionally, Wayne's duty belt was found hanging on the wall, but his service holster was empty. With both a missing officer's weapon and a potential suicide note, the police had to consider that Denise was both in extreme danger and potentially armed. Further checking into the history of the couple revealed a prior domestic complaint filed by Denise in December of 2003, which she had later withdrawn, admitting she had fabricated the details during a heated argument. Friends of the victim also revealed that just a day before his death, Wayne had decided to end the relationship permanently, a decision that likely shattered Denise's fragile sense of security. The breakthrough came when a second handwritten note was discovered on the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home. In this brief message, Denise apologized, stating she had taken both of their lives and asking that their mothers be contacted. This was, in essence, a confession. When the alert was sent out, the police in Gainesville responded with the news of Denise's attempted suicide in the hotel room. At the hospital, investigators attempted to interview Denise. The trauma of the self-inflicted gunshot wound, combined with the presence of alcohol and medication, had severely impacted her cognitive functions. When questioned by Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy, Denise claimed to have no memory of the events of the previous night, denying that she had hurt Wayne or herself. Over the following days, her physical condition deteriorated, leaving her partially paralyzed and blind in one eye. While some questioned whether her memory loss was a convenient psychological defense or genuine retrograde amnesia, medical experts noted that physical trauma to the brain can indeed cause the mind to block out highly traumatic events to protect itself. Ultimately, forensic science provided the clarity that memory could not. The autopsy of Wayne Irby confirmed he was killed by a single .25 caliber bullet, which ballistics proved was fired from the same handgun found beside Denise in the Gainesville hotel room. The weapon was traced to Denise's stepfather. Furthermore, tests on the handgun's trigger showed it required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to discharge, directly contradicting any defense claims that the shooting had been a mere physical accident. Her subsequent flight, the failure to call for medical assistance for Wayne, and the preparation of the confession notes further demonstrated a conscious awareness of her actions at the time of the crime. On July 10, 2006, the state of Texas versus Denise Miller went to trial. Denise appeared in a wheelchair in a frail and weakened state, while her defense team argued that the shooting was a tragic accident and pointed to a line in her final, lengthy hotel note suggesting she had panicked after an accidental discharge. The prosecution presented a compelling case of a tragic, control-driven crime. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. At the sentencing phase, the jury took into account her severe, self-inflicted physical disabilities and spared her the death penalty, sentencing her instead to 62 years in prison. It was a tragic conclusion to a relationship that had begun with promise, offering a sobering reminder of how unchecked possessiveness can destroy multiple lives. Our second case study shifts to Houston, Texas, in March of 2007, involving a brilliant young college student named Tanisha Stewart and her former boyfriend, Timothy Shepard. This case highlights a different, yet equally destructive, dynamic of control, jealousy, and the tragic consequences of a young person's pursuit of independence. Tanisha Stewart was a 19-year-old college freshman at Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University, raised in one of Houston's challenging neighborhoods. She had lost her father at an early age, but remained deeply focused on her education. Her family viewed her as a bright and shining star destined for great achievements. In May of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, the 17-year-old Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 at the time. Despite the 8-year age gap, Timothy pursued Tanisha, eventually winning over both her and her family with his helpful presence around their home, assisting with household chores and technology repairs. However, as Tanisha began her college career, her world expanded. She earned a scholarship to the university, located nearly 2 hours away from Houston. This physical distance tested the relationship. Timothy briefly ended the relationship to pursue an old acquaintance, but quickly regretted the decision and traveled to the university campus to reconcile with Tanisha. Although they resumed dating, the dynamic had shifted. Tanisha had grown more independent, making new friends and exploring her own potential. Timothy's behavior became increasingly possessive and controlling. He began calling her incessantly, sometimes traveling to her campus to search for her when she did not answer his calls. During the spring break of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston to spend time with her family and friends. While she saw Timothy briefly, she also spent time with a college friend named Mark Marks, with whom she had developed a close, affectionate relationship. Tanisha's family began to notice a growing tension. Her sister, Gayla Taylor, even recalled having a distressing dream about Tanisha's safety, which Tanisha gently dismissed, promising she would be fine. On Sunday, March 18th, 2007, the family's fears became reality. Tanisha failed to attend a scheduled concert with her friends and had not checked in with her mother or siblings, an entirely unprecedented departure from her normal behavior. Her family filed a missing persons report on Monday, March 19th, and investigators immediately began looking for clues. As one of the last people to see Tanisha, Timothy Shepard was brought in for questioning. He told detectives that he had picked Tanisha up early on Thursday morning, March 15th, and brought her to his apartment. According to Timothy, while they were in his vehicle, Tanisha received a telephone call from Mark Marks, which sparked an argument. Timothy claimed that once they arrived at the apartment, Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and went to sleep. The following morning, when he confronted her again, she allegedly refused to speak. about Mark grew angry and walked out of the apartment on foot, leaving his life forever. Timothy cooperative behavior during the initial 20-hour interrogation and his consent to a search of his apartment led investigators to believe he might not be directly involved. They shifted their focus to Mark Marks. However, Mark cooperated fully, explaining that Tanisha had expressed a desire to end her relationship with Timothy and move on with her life. Mark's alibi was verified by multiple witnesses, placing him at a gathering on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, entirely clearing him of suspicion. With the primary leads exhausted, investigators faced the grim possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger after leaving Timothy's apartment. A neighborhood search was launched, and a canine unit was brought in to search a nearby wooded area after a neighbor reported hearing suspicious sounds around the time of the disappearance. The search of the woods, however, yielded no relevant evidence. During this time, neighbors at Timothy's apartment complex began reporting highly unusual activity. On the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been seen operating 2 barbecue grills on his patio continuously over the weekend, generating a significant volume of smoke that had prompted a call to the fire department. Timothy told the responding firefighters that he was preparing a large quantity of meat for an upcoming church event, a statement that seemed plausible when firefighters observed what appeared to be raw meat soaking in his bathtub. Furthermore, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his patio with an exceptionally large quantity of bleach, the odor of which was strong enough to irritate the eyes. Tanisha's family, frustrated by the lack of progress, reached out to community activist Quan Nell X for assistance. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Quan Nell X agreed to meet with Timothy privately at his apartment. Sensing Timothy's immense distress and defensive posture, Quan Nell X urged him to speak honestly. In a quiet, emotional confrontation in the apartment's bathroom, Timothy broke down. He confessed to Quan Nell X that during their argument over Mark Marks, he had flown into a jealous rage and strangled Tanisha to death. He then claimed to have placed her body in a nearby dumpster. Quan Nell X immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. Alongside detectives and a distraught Timothy, they traveled to the apartment complex's dumpster. However, the dumpster had been recently emptied, and investigators realized that the contents had already been transported to a massive local landfill. Given the scale of the facility, a physical search was deemed practically impossible. Shortly after his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to counsel and ceased cooperating with the authorities. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution and the crime scene investigation team had to locate physical evidence within the apartment. A meticulous search of the residence was conducted. Investigators recovered tiny, charred bone fragments near the patio grill and, crucially, a small piece of tooth enamel from the kitchen garbage disposal. Forensic analysis confirmed that the enamel matched Tanisha's dental records. The horrific reality of the crime became clear. Timothy had mutilated and incinerated Tanisha's remains on his patio smoker to conceal his actions. On September 29, 2008, the trial of the state of Texas versus Timothy Shepard began. The prosecution faced the challenge of presenting a highly disturbing, circumstantial case without a body. They argued that Timothy's possessiveness had driven him to commit a horrific act of violence, rather than allow Tanisha to live an independent life. Quan Nel X provided pivotal testimony regarding Timothy's confession and Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, testified that Timothy had previously made chilling remarks about how he would dispose of someone if they ever crossed him. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand and claimed he had acted in self-defense, asserting that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that he had blacked out during the struggle. However, his actions following her death, particularly the systematic destruction of her remains, completely undermined any claim of a tragic accident or self-defense. The jury found Timothy Shepard guilty of murder and sentenced him to 99 years in prison. The verdict provided a sense of resolution for Tanisha's grieving family, standing as a solemn testament to the tireless efforts of the investigators who refused to let her story be erased. Our third case study takes us to Raleigh and Durham, North Carolina, in January of 2008. This case involves a 21-year-old college student named Latrice Curtis and exposes an intricate, deeply unsettling web of obsession, jealousy, and betrayal that culminated in an act of extreme violence along a busy interstate highway. On the cold morning of January 30th, 2008, morning commuters traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, noticed what appeared to be a body lying in the grass beside the road. First, responders arrived to discover a young woman who had been brutally stabbed multiple times about her face, neck, and torso. Her injuries were catastrophic, and it was clear she had fought desperately for her life. Approximately a half-mile down the highway, investigators located a white sedan abandoned on the shoulder. Among the commuters passing the scene that morning was Darren Curtis. Seeing the backup and the emergency vehicles, Darren felt a sudden sense of unease. Moments later, he recognized the white vehicle on the side of the road as belonging to his wife, Latrice. In a state of panic, Darren returned to the crime scene, where detectives confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was indeed his 21-year-old wife, Latrice. Latrice Curtis was a highly popular, ambitious business administration student at North Carolina Central University. She had married Darren, an accounting student and National Guard veteran, just 9 months prior. To family and friends, the young couple appeared to be deeply in love and building a promising future. The sheer brutality of the crime, involving over 40 stab wounds, suggested a deeply personal motive, driven by intense rage rather than a random act of violence. Investigators initially focused on Darren Curtis, questioning him extensively and examining him for physical signs of a struggle. Darren cooperated fully, explaining that Latrice had called him around 10 post-meridium the previous evening to say she was running late from her classes and planned to get some food. Darren had fallen asleep and, upon waking the next morning and finding her missing, assumed she had stayed at her family's home. A search of their apartment and Darren's vehicle yielded no evidence, and he had no physical injuries, leading investigators to look elsewhere. A critical breakthrough occurred during the autopsy when medical examiners recovered a condom from Latrice's body. There were no physical signs of sexual assault, suggesting the sexual encounter had been consensual. This discovery indicated that Latrice may have been involved in an extramarital relationship. Detectives immediately subpoenaed Latrice's phone records and identified a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight on the night of the murder with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent student and basketball player at the university, with aspirations of playing professionally in the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the murder, Stephen walked into the sheriff's office to provide a statement. He was accompanied by his roommate and landlord, a well-known local pastor named Robert Reeves, who was highly regarded in the community. During questioning, Stephen initially claimed he and Latrice were merely classmates. However, when confronted with the forensic and telephone evidence, he admitted they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. He explained that Latrice had visited his basement apartment on the night of January 29th, and they had engaged in a consensual sexual encounter during which the condom had become lodged. Stephen claimed Latrice left his residence around 10 post-meridium, and he left shortly after to visit his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton, remaining there until approximately 1 o'clock in the morning. He claimed Latrice had called him repeatedly throughout the night, expressing anxiety about a potential pregnancy. To verify this timeline, investigators interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves. The 43-year-old minister confirmed that Latrice's vehicle had been parked outside their home and that he had departed for a church service around 8:15 post-meridium, returning at 11:30 to find both vehicles gone. He also mentioned that Stephen had confided in him about Latrice's late-night phone calls. As detectives worked to verify Stephen's alibi, they interviewed Velma Newton, who confirmed Stephen's presence at her home, but also revealed a pattern of harassment. Both she and Stephen had been receiving anonymous, threatening telephone calls urging them to end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen's car tires had been slashed recently. The direction of the investigation changed dramatically when a state trooper reported discovering a disabled vehicle on the shoulder of Interstate 540 around 1:30 anti-meridium on January 30th, just hours before Latrice's body was found. The vehicle had its hazard lights on, and a check of the license plate revealed it was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Across the highway, the trooper had also observed Latrice's white sedan parked with its hazard lights on. This revelation placed the pastor's vehicle at the exact location of the Homicide during the estimated time of death. Investigators brought Pastor Reeves back for questioning and noticed fresh scratches on his hands and arms, which he claimed were sustained while moving a desk with Stephen. However, Stephen denied any knowledge of the desk incident or any injuries. A deeper analysis of the pastor's phone records revealed that the anonymous, blocked calls to Stephen and Velma had originated from Reeves' cellular telephone. Further investigation into Stephen's living arrangements painted a highly disturbing psychological picture. Stephen revealed that Pastor Reeves had developed an intense, inappropriate obsession with him, even offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors, an advance that Stephen had firmly rejected. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves suggested a man living a deeply compartmentalized double life. To his congregation, he was a charismatic, spiritual leader. In private, he was driven by intense, possessive desires. Investigators concluded that Reeves, consumed by jealousy over Stephen's relationship with Latrice, had followed her from the residence on the night of the murder. He likely used his authority and familiar presence to convince her to pull over on the interstate, where he carried out the savage attack, driven by the irrational belief that removing Latrice would allow him to secure Stephen's affection. Forensic science ultimately secured the case. DNA analysis of a sample recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car matched Robert Reeves. While the defense argued that the presence of Stephen's DNA under Latrice's fingernails pointed to him as the true culprit, the prosecution successfully demonstrated that this was a result of their intimate contact earlier that evening. They argued that the sheer volume of Reeves' DNA in her vehicle, combined with his fabricated alibi, his physical injuries, and his vehicle's presence at the scene, left no room for reasonable doubt. On October 7, 2009, the jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a profound sense of relief to the community and Latrice's family, exposing the danger of a predator who hid behind a cloak of religious authority. These three cases, though distinct in their details, share a common psychological thread. They demonstrate how the desire for control and the inability to accept boundaries can warp human affection into destructive violence. In each instance, it was the methodical, dedicated work of law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and vigilant community members that pierced the veil of deception, ensuring that the truth was revealed and justice was served. Through understanding these tragedies, we are reminded of the vital importance of recognizing the early signs of possessiveness and maintaining a steadfast commitment to protecting the vulnerable in our communities. As an analyst of the human mind and a chronicler of those dark corners where passion turns to malice, one is frequently reminded that the grandest tragedies often arise from the most ordinary human frailties. In the study of crime, we do not merely seek to catalog the physical debris of a violent act. Instead, we strive to reconstruct the psychological architecture that allowed such a collapse to occur. The investigative process is not a simple search for clues, but a patient, scientific pursuit of truth, serving as a quiet testament to the resilience of human society and the triumph of justice. In examining 3 distinct cases of love turned lethal, we see a recurring pattern of possessiveness, projection, and the dangerous delusion of absolute control. By analyzing these events, we honor the lives of the victims while shedding a sober light on the mechanisms of the criminal mind. The first of these stories takes us to the quiet expanses of North Texas, where the illusions of a peaceful suburban existence were shattered by a tragic cascade of jealousy and unresolved trauma. In the early morning hours of December 11th, 2004, a tranquil silence hung over the city of Gainesville, Texas. But just past 4 in the morning, the calm was broken at a local hotel. The night manager received an alarming phone call from one of the guest rooms. Sensing something was seriously amiss, the manager walked down the dimly lit hallway to investigate. He knocked gently on the door of room 147, calling out to the guest, but received no response. The door was secured from the inside with a heavy deadbolt. Realizing the urgency of the situation, the front desk worker summoned the maintenance man, who was instructed to force entry. When the heavy wooden door finally gave way, the 2 men stepped into a darkened room and made a startling discovery. Lying alone on the floor was the female caller. The room was in complete disarray, and the woman was curled in a fetal position, covered in blood, and clearly in a state of shock. She was conscious, but disoriented, slurring her words in a daze. A closer inspection revealed a catastrophic injury, a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye, resting on the floor only inches away from her hand was a .25 caliber handgun. The hotel manager immediately contacted emergency services. Within minutes, police officers and emergency medical technicians arrived at the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic as first responders focused on stabilizing the woman, whose life hung in the balance. As she was rushed to a nearby trauma center, officers at the hotel began the painstaking process of examining the room. They noted the presence of alcohol and over-the-counter sleeping medication, but found no signs of an intruder. The preliminary assessment left investigators with 2 plausible scenarios. Either the woman had attempted to take her own life, or an assailant had shot her and fled before help arrived. The mystery deepened significantly when investigators identified the injured woman as Denise Miller. Upon running her name through the database, a chill ran through the department. Denise and her boyfriend, a local police officer named Wayne Irby, had been reported missing just 24 hours earlier. Wayne, a dedicated 37-year-old veteran of the Little Elm Police Department, had failed to show up for his 6 in the morning shift on December 10th. For an officer who literally bled blue and was known for his punctual, reliable nature, a no-show without communication was an immediate red flag. To reconstruct the events of those missing 24 hours, investigators had. To look backward into the history of Wayne and Denise. Denise Swall had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where she was remembered as a popular, bubbly, and personable young woman. She married her college sweetheart and gave birth to 2 children, Whitney and Walter. When that marriage ended in divorce, Denise sought a clean slate. At 36, she relocated her family to the close-knit Dallas suburb of Little Elm, Texas. She secured a successful position with a liquor distributor, managed her finances prudently, and built a beautiful home for her family. Yet, despite her professional success, Denise yearned for a partner to share her life. That opportunity arrived in 2003 when Wayne Irby, a friendly officer on his neighborhood beat, knocked on her door to advise her that her garagedeur was open. A professional courtesy soon evolved into a mutual attraction. Wayne, a divorced father himself, was charismatic and quickly bonded with Denise and her children. The family dynamic appeared harmonious, but beneath the surface, a destructive element was beginning to take root. Denise harbored a deep insecurity that manifested as intense jealousy. Wayne was a naturally friendly and outgoing man, well liked on his beat. This sociable nature, however, became a source of constant friction. Denise frequently accused Wayne of infidelity, accusations he vehemently denied. Criminal psychologists often observe that when a person struggles with severe trust issues, they begin to project their internal anxieties onto their partner, transforming benign interactions into evidence of betrayal. This toxic cycle escalated in December 2003 when Denise filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne after discovering him at his rental home with another woman, although she later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had initiated the physical altercation and fabricated the details of Wayne's aggression. The damage to the relationship was profound. By 2004, they attempted to rebuild their bond, eventually purchasing a home together. Yet, cohabitation only amplified their conflicts. Wayne eventually decided to move out, renting a separate house across town. When Denise lost her job in November of that year, Wayne, motivated by concern for her children, agreed to reconcile and try once more to resolve their differences. However, the underlying issues remained unaddressed. By December 9th, 2004, Wayne had decided that the relationship was over. On the morning of December 10th, Wayne's colleagues realized something was terribly wrong. His partner, Jerry Walker, and Officer James went obtained a key to Wayne's rental home from his landlord. Upon entering, they found his personal fanny pack and his mobile phone on the kitchen counter. For a police officer, leaving behind his primary means of communication was an ominous sign. Moments later, Officer Wynn walked down the hallway and discovered Wayne lying face down on the floor. He had been shot a single time in the back of the head. The location of the wound suggested Wayne had been ambushed, never seeing the fatal shot coming. Given his profession, investigators initially considered whether the homicide was work-related. However, Wayne's reputation as a fair and genial officer made this theory unlikely. The focus quickly shifted to Denise, whose disappearance coincided with Wayne's death. A search of the home Denise shared with her children revealed two crucial pieces of evidence: Wayne's empty duty holster hanging on the wall and a handwritten note from Denise expressing a profound desire to end her suffering. Meanwhile, at the crime scene in Wayne's rental home, investigators discovered a second note placed on the kitchen island. It was an explicit confession in Denise's handwriting, stating, "I'm sorry, I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." The discovery of Denise in the Gainesville hotel room 12 hours later seemed to bring the tragic search to an end, but the physical evidence presented a more complicated picture. Inside the hotel room, police recovered Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. It had jammed because Denise had attempted to load a bullet backward into the chamber. Having failed to discharge the larger weapon, she resorted to a .25 caliber handgun belonging to her stepfather, firing a single shot into her own temple. Remarkably, Denise survived the self-inflicted wound. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy attempted to interview her in the hospital, he encountered a woman suffering from severe cognitive deficits, partial paralysis, and blindness in one eye. She claimed to have absolutely no memory of the events surrounding Wayne's death or her own suicide attempt. To the psychological analyst, memory loss following a severe traumatic brain injury can be a genuine physical phenomenon, as the mind seeks to shield itself from overwhelming guilt or horror. Yet to the investigators, it was also a convenient defense. On July 10, 2006, Denise Miller stood trial at the Denton County Courthouse, appearing in a wheelchair in a frail and weakened state. Her defense team argued that Wayne's death had been a tragic accident, pointing to a line in her third suicide note where she claimed she had not intended to hurt him and had panicked. They argued that a person writing their final words is highly likely to be honest. The prosecution, however, presented a meticulous forensic case to dismantle this narrative. They introduced evidence from the state crime lab demonstrating that the trigger of the .25 caliber handgun required 4.5 to 5 pounds of deliberate pressure to fire, entirely undermining the theory of an accidental discharge. Furthermore, the single bullet had entered the dead center of the back of Wayne's head, a trajectory highly inconsistent with an accidental struggle. Finally, the prosecution highlighted Denise's actions in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, rather than calling for an ambulance or attempting to save Wayne's life. She had written a confession note, taken his service weapon, and fled to a hotel to hide. The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before returning a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, the jury took her permanent physical disabilities into account and spared her the death penalty, sentencing her instead to 62 years in prison. It was a somber conclusion to a case where an obsessive need for control had ultimately destroyed 2 lives and left 2 families to pick up the pieces. While the tragedy in Little Elm arose from a domestic relationship that slowly deteriorated into violence, the second case, which occurred in Houston, Texas, represents a shocking example of how youthful promise can be ruthlessly extinguished by a mind entirely consumed by possessiveness. In March 2007, 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart returned home to Houston from her freshman year at Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University to spend her spring break with her family. Tanisha was a young woman of exceptional talent and determination, one of 6 children raised in a tough Houston neighborhood. She had lost her father at a young age, but refused to let her circumstances define her. Her academic achievements had earned her a full college scholarship, making her a source of immense pride for her mother and siblings. During her late teenage years, Tanisha had entered into a relationship with 25-year-old Timothy Shepard, whom she met while they were both working at a local pizza restaurant. Despite an 8-year age gap, Timothy managed to win over Tanisha's family by assisting her mother with household repairs and presenting himself as a mature, supportive partner. However, as Tanisha transitioned to university life, a psychological imbalance began to emerge. Tanisha was expanding her horizons, discovering her independence and meeting new people. Timothy, conversely, remained stagnant, and his affection quickly curdled into a suffocating possessiveness. He began calling her incessantly, demanding to know her whereabouts, and even drove to her college campus to search for her when she failed to answer his phone calls. Tanisha, hoping to preserve the relationship without the accompanying control and aggression, found herself caught in a difficult emotional position. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Tanisha's sister Gayla Taylor received a phone call from their mother. Tanisha had failed to show up for a highly anticipated concert with her friends, and her mobile phone was going straight to voicemail. This behavior was entirely out of character for the responsible teenager. As 36 hours passed without any word, the family filed a missing persons report. Investigators immediately contacted Timothy Shepard, who agreed to come to the police station for questioning. Timothy maintained a calm demeanor during a 20-hour interrogation. He claimed that Tanisha had stayed at his apartment on the night of Thursday, March 15th, but had left on foot the following morning. According to Timothy, they had argued because Tanisha received an early morning phone call from a college friend named Mark Marks. Timothy admitted he suspected her of cheating on him, but insisted that she had walked out of his apartment alive and that he had not seen her since. Because Timothy gave investigators voluntary written consent to search his apartment, officers conducted a physical inspection of his home, finding no immediate signs of a struggle or foul play and lacking any evidence to detain him. They returned his keys and released him. The investigation then turned to Mark Marks, the young man whose phone call had sparked the argument. Mark was cooperative and articulate. He admitted that he was dating Tanisha and that she had expressed a desire to leave Timothy permanently. Crucially, Mark provided an ironclad alibi. He had been attending a gathering on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, a claim verified by independent witnesses. With Mark cleared, investigators were left with the disturbing possibility that Tanisha had been abducted by a stranger. After leaving Timothy's apartment on foot, a canine search of the wooded area surrounding Timothy's apartment was conducted. After a neighbor reported hearing gunshots on the night of the disappearance, the search only located the remains of a deceased animal, bringing temporary relief but no answers. As Tanisha's family and volunteers organized search parties, investigators began receiving bizarre reports from residents of Timothy's apartment complex. Neighbors recalled that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had spent the entire weekend continuously operating 2 large barbecue grills on his patio. The smoke had become so intense and uncontrollable that residents had